What's up, everybody? Doing a podcast. It's been a long time, man. I had a short-lived podcast probably around 2016, 2017. Really enjoyed doing it. Got to talk to cool folks. Talked to Mike from Yob, Joe from Paul Bear, a couple of dudes from Wake, Little Rock Wake, not Canada Wake. And surprisingly, a lot of people have been asking me since then if I planned on doing this again, which was kind of a shock to me because, you know, I didn't even think anybody heard it. But some of y'all liked it, and I liked doing it. I love podcasts, and I enjoyed the process of figuring it out, which is what I'm going to do with this one. I've been putting it off, man. It's, you know, we face a lot of resistance internally and externally, or at least I do, doing new stuff, and figured I'd just get it started and figure it out as I go along. Another reason I've been putting this off for a while is pretty obvious. There's been things going on that have affected all of us. You know, I moved to Texas March 1st of 2020, kind of out to the middle of nowhere, which ended up being interesting to say the least, considering the circumstances that unfolded. So yeah, back then when the lockdowns started, I just started writing music and demoing, probably as a bit of a coping mechanism. And I didn't really want to do anything else creatively. I was just strictly focused on writing songs. I didn't know if it would come out, if anybody would hear any of the stuff I was working on, which is kind of similar to the very first Spirit Adrift stuff. I was just doing it for me. And so I was writing. 3 of those songs ended up becoming the Forge Your Future EP. And then I kept writing and writing. I probably wrote 20 or 30 songs between March 2020 and when I sort of finally honed in on the 8 songs I wanted to record as an album. And 2 songs ended up being on 20 Centuries Gone. So yeah, that's all I was doing for a couple years as far as creative endeavors. And something that I never got to do before was like the write too much stuff and then whittle it down approach, which was really cool. I got to do it with this new record. I would hone in on 8 songs. I like 8 songs, you know, old Ozzy, old Metallica. 40 to 45 minutes, I think, is perfect. And usually with the length of songs that I write, that'll end up being 8. It's been less. Maybe one day it'll be more. But right now, 8's the magic number. And so I would hone in on 8 songs that I thought were good enough for an album. But I would keep writing. Usually in the past, once I had the 8 songs figured out, that's it. I'm just going to focus on those and hone those down to be as good as they can. But this time, I still did that. I still worked on whatever 8 songs I thought would end up being on the album, but I wrote more. And then sometimes in, you know, these magical, rare moments of spontaneous combustion where you get something really special, that would happen. And then I would have a song that I thought was better than one of those 8 songs, and I would just replace one of the previous 8 songs with this new thing. And I just kept doing that for a couple of years. So I think this is the first Spirit Adrift album where all 8 songs on it have that really special, spontaneous first seed that us musicians and artists and writers and creative types are always searching for. But you can't control it. And all you can do is give it time. And I had a lot of time. But anyway, all of that sort of kept me focused creatively. And it was always in the back of my mind to do another podcast. And I'm psyched to be doing it. I don't really have an idea for formula or anything like that. Eventually, I'll probably get another one of these and start bringing people in here and having conversations with people. But for now, I'm just going to talk. I did have a cool idea of like put a record over my left shoulder here, whatever I've been listening to in the last week, right? So last night I was listening to Death, Spiritual Healing, which is a pretty common occurrence in my life. So I'll talk a little bit about that record at the end. band updates and whatnot. I kind of just gave you a rundown of the last couple years. But yeah, the play gears were pretty sparse. We did some shows with High on Fire. That was cool. And last year really felt like we were back on track. You know, 2020, we were supposed to do all kinds of stuff. We were going to go to Europe with COC. We were going to do like half a year here and in Europe with Paul Bear because they had just put out Forgotten Days. We put out Enlightened Eternity. Obviously, none of that ended up happening. I feel like we sort of made the best of it, like a lot of people did, you know, just sort of stayed active in whatever ways that we could. But I will say last year it felt a lot better just to get back on the road, playing shows. We did Spring in Europe with Yob, one of my favorite bands, which was killer. And then we did a pretty long run with Crowbar, another one of my favorite bands, which was killer. And then we closed the year out doing a run with COC, another one of my favorite bands. I used to see Corrosion of Conformity and Crowbar when I was a kid, you know, so it was cool to get to tour with three of my favorite bands last year. Great people, great times, killer shows. And then, yeah, just been working on a new record in the meantime. Recorded it last year, and it'll be out. I mean, the wheels of the industry and vinyl production and all that are turning slower than they ever have. I'm sure you're all aware, but it's fucking excruciating. It's one of my least favorite things in the world is waiting for a record to come out after it's been done. And, you know, 3-4 months was hard enough. 6 months is hard, but dude, it's taken like almost a year at this point. So it's fucking excruciating, but I promise you it'll be worth the wait. I keep telling myself that every day, so I'll tell you that too. It's worth the wait. I'm really proud of it. Anyway, yeah, that's coming out later this year, and we'll be back on the road to support it. So that's brief catch up with the Spirit Adrift stuff. What else? Oh yeah. Usually I wouldn't even talk about shit like this, but quite a few people were bringing this to my attention. This isn't even a news story anymore at this point. It's a couple months old, which might as well be 100 years old. But I'm going to address the the phenomenon of middle-aged men in clown makeup saying that there's no new bands that are any good. It's strange. It's been happening a little bit. And it sticks in my craw, man. It's bullshit. So one of the dudes that said this, I guess, was in this band Avatar. I've never heard him, to my knowledge. I looked at a picture of him, and, you know, I don't know these guys. No disrespect or anything, but I'm sure it's not my thing. It's got a pirate, clown, carnival sort of vibe or whatever. So I didn't even really look at what that guy said. Something about, I mean, what he said is kind of the same gist of what this guy Adam from Behemoth said, which is like new bands are too slick and too perfect, and there's not. I mean, I could paraphrase, or I could just read what Adam said. Adam from Behemoth. Every band these days, you talk to every band, and every band, literally, heavy metal band, thrash, death, whatever, says, oh, we managed to get that organic sound. And then I go and listen to those records, and I'm like, there's nothing organic about this record. 99% of the records, they sound robotic. Every fucking click, every kick, every snare drum, every part of the record is exactly the same. It's not organic. Organic is when music fluctuates, when there's dynamics, when it goes up and down. And then he goes on to explain the context of what he's saying, which is they hired Joe Barresi to mix the last album because he's more like old school. Yeah, and then these days you can fucking perfect things to the point that you cannot fucking listen to it because the perfection makes things boring and perfect and a whole lot uninteresting. Live, it's not perfect. That's why it's so fucking exciting. So why make things that are just so fucking polished? He goes on to say it's got to be weird and dangerous, and where's the danger factor? Blah blah blah. I'm gonna be honest. Like I'm there's like sort of a boys club of these older, more established guys, whether it's dudes in bands and or managers, agents, and stuff like that, that are always saying this kind of shit, and they seem to sort of be protective of their success and gatekeep in a certain way, whether it's like just taking the same bands on tour over and over, the same little bubble of guys at that level, or whether it's saying shit like this. And it sticks in my craw, man. Like I said, normally I don't even pay any attention to this sort of shit. And I was going to torch this guy because people were talking to me about this. And, you know, if you read the headline of stuff like this, it'll get you riled up. And that's the point. These websites want clicks. And so they'll take like a whole 2-hour interview, mine one little thing that they know is going to like rile people up. Either people are going to super agree with it or disagree with it. We all know this is going on. This is nothing new. I've been a victim of it myself last year with some, or it might have been 2 years ago, talking about throwing sandwiches at Limp Bizkit. And, you know, people looked at the headline and Limp Bizkit fans got furious. And I did throw sandwiches at Limp Bizkit, but there was a little bit more to it than that. And it was sort of taken out of context. Point being, I looked at the headline of this and got pissed off and was going to torch this guy. And then I read what he actually said, and I don't disagree with the sentiment of what he's saying. I'm no fucking spring chicken, as you can tell. Depending on when this episode comes out, I'll either be in the last days of 34 years old or the first days of 35 years old. Which in this business, you know, it's not super old, but I'm not a kid, definitely. And I grew up listening to really old school shit. Hank Williams and, you know, Jimi Hendrix, and the first band I really fell in love with was Black Sabbath. And I've always preferred super organic stuff with a lot of soul and humanity, and the mistakes are what makes it human. And I agree with this guy, Adam, that stuff is too polished now. But to say that 99% of new bands sound exactly the same and are soulless and too perfect and sampled, and you're just lazy, man. You're just fucking lazy. You're in an insulated bubble. You're a little bit older. You're successful. You're busy, you know. But you got to try a little harder, man. You just got to try harder. There's a lot of good bands right now. I definitely understand the sentiment of being like, the soul is gone from heavy music. The soul is gone from rock music, but it's not, man. And part of the reason that these really unique, cool, interesting, imperfect bands aren't on your radar is because of what I was just talking about, that there's a fucking boys club that unless you've been around forever and paid your dues, or unless your band has some kind of meme-like quality, for instance, wearing pirate clown makeup or something like that, it's a lot more difficult for cool, unique bands to get on people's radar these days than it was when guys like you were coming up, man. How are you going to find out about cool new bands? You going to watch Headbangers Ball? Doesn't exist. You going to turn on your FM hard rock station? Well, they're still playing the same Papa Roach song that came out in 2000. You going to turn on Fuse? Doesn't exist. You going to turn on whatever, MTV2, where they're playing music videos? MTV doesn't really do anything relating to music at all anymore. VH1, they used to do like, I don't know, at least old school metal, top 100, whatever, hard rock bands, and they're not even doing that kind of shit anymore. You're going to read Guitar World magazine? They're still featuring the same bands that they were when I was 15 years old and had a subscription back in 2003, man. Like, we all need to try better, try harder, be better. You know, I'm getting older. I understand the dangers of slipping into old man, been around the block cynicism and just wanting to listen to old Black Sabbath and AC/DC records. I get it. I catch myself doing that all the time. But on the flip side, you have a guy like Fenriz, right? Who is probably, I would guess, around the same age as Adam from Behemoth. And this guy has been, man, he might even be old. He's probably older. And this dude helped invent the genre that bands like Behemoth are subsequently like gentrifying. And Fenriz always, and still to this day, makes a huge effort to discover new up-and-coming bands. And he puts them on his radio show, talks them up, you know. That's the way to be. In a world of atoms, let's all strive to be more like Fenriz, you know. I don't want to pile on too much. I've got mutual friends with Adam, and I hear good things about him, and I know he, does yoga and cardio kickboxing and shit like that, and I respect all of that. And I'm not trying to attack him as a person because I don't know him, but I'm just addressing what he said. So if anybody gets pissed off at me, feel free to attack what I'm saying, but motherfucker, you don't know me, so don't attack me or I'll block and delete your monkey ass. All right. With that out of the way, talk about Spiritual Healing by Death. I was listening to it last night because I've been like posting my record collection on social media and having conversations with people, and it's been a lot of fun. This record seems to be pretty divisive. I don't know, man. It's always been my favorite. It was the first one I heard. It was probably the first legit death metal record that I ever heard. So maybe it's difficult to separate the music with the really vivid memories of being like 16 years old, listening to that and feeling like something I'm not supposed to be hearing, you know. Yeah, I listened to it a lot growing up, so there's a lot of really cool memories attached to it. But also just attempting to be objective, to me, it's the best one. You know, people talk about Human's great. And I don't know, maybe it was the reissue, like the remixed, remastered deal that I was listening to, but it just didn't sound that great when I was listening to that one last night. And it's a little too, there's like slap bass, and I'm not super huge on slap bass and death metal. There's a new band from South America, I believe, called Suppression that does it really well. But usually like on Human, I'm not really feeling the bass too much, man. I like every Death album. I love every Death album. But to me, Spiritual Healing is special because it has like the raw, almost punk rock ferocity of the early stuff, but they're starting to sneak the progressive elements in and the forward thinking lyrics and introspective lyrics, and getting away from like the cheesy horror movie stuff, which I love cheesy horror movie stuff, but it's not so far into the introspective, progressive, super genius type stuff that it loses that raw heaviness and brutality. And I have a theory that I developed last night. I guess I would have to actually talk to him. Maybe there's interviews and stuff out there. But Terry Butler, the bass player, who's been in every cool death metal band, he's got a new band, by the way, called Inhuman Condition, that are great. Sound real old school. Anyway, yeah, he played on Spiritual Healing, and I think that's the only record that he has co-writes. And man, there's some riffs on Spiritual Healing that are got that like whoop your ass obituary groove, that like Florida redneck. You could tell these guys grew up listening to Skynyrd, you know, in addition to Savatage. and Molly Hatchet, shit like that. And I just wonder, I would like to know, because Terry's got quite a few co-write credits on Spiritual Healing. I would be curious to know exactly which riffs that he contributed. Because for my taste, there's sort of a secret weapon going on there, and it might just be Terry Butler. I'm sure he would be super humble about it if anybody has asked him or if anybody decides to ask him. But yeah, just got me thinking. I fucking love Spiritual Healing, man. James Murphy's one of my favorite guitarists ever. Also been in every cool death metal band that there is. And him and Chuck trading back and forth is just like, I just remember sitting with the liner notes as a kid. Oh, that's Chuck. Oh, that's James Murphy. Oh, that's Chuck. Oh, that's James Murphy. Dude, and just studying and just feeling so excited. And yeah, on the relevant topic, I understand how when you get older, it's hard to feel that excited about something. It's hard to find that same like real genuine chemical reaction that's going on in your body that you had when you were 15 and 16 listening to death metal and crazy shit. But it's out there, man. It's out there. So to wrap this up, just to stave off the inevitable trudge towards being a bitter old man that hates all new music, I'm gonna practice what I preach and just name off some cool bands that are new-ish. There was like 2 ghost years there, so by new, I'm gonna mean like the last 10 years, which is really only the last 8 years. Some of these are newer than that, but you get what I'm saying. Hellas from Sweden, right? Great shit, like weird Captain Beyond kind of progged out 70s stuff, but it's really like genuine and sounds relevant to the current era of music. Really cool vocals, man, like really interesting, weird. You want to talk about weird and dangerous and fucked up? Check them out. Malo Karpatin from Slovakia. Real ass, like first wave black metal. Creepy, man. Like really remarkable vocal delivery and riffs. Great stuff. Fugitive from Texas. It's like a Texas super group. Old school thrash, crossover type stuff. Blake from Fugitive is one of the best riff writers of a generation. I'm sure everybody knows who Blake is. Frozen Soul from Texas. I'm sure everybody knows who that is. Duel, D-U-E-L from Texas. They're huge in Europe, man, but for whatever reason, maybe not as well known in their home country of Texas. Great shit, old school like psych rock with a lot of attitude. Rowdy. Jeff from Duel was a co-producer, really the producer of the new Spirit Adrift album. And if you want to talk about living in the human element of playing music, he's all about it. Necrot, you all know Necrot. Fucking amazing death metal. Raw. Undeath from New York. Same thing. Great death metal, super raw, super human, you know. Enforced from Virginia. We played with them at Tattoo the Earth last year. And I had seen the name, I had heard some songs and just seen them around. I knew they were getting after it, working their asses off, and their set was killer. It was like watching Slayer, man. Old Slayer with Lombardo. Garrett from Portugal. I went and saw these guys the other night with Rotting Christ. There's a good band for Behemoth to take on tour, man. If you're not scared, check out Garrett on Season of Mist. That's my friend Guillerme's band. They fit right into that world. You know, black metal, but with a big emphasis on the visual and performance element. It's truly a performance. And they don't need like explosions and laser beams and shit like that. It's like a real human performance. They would be a great tour mate for Behemoth. Suffering Hour from Minneapolis. That would be a great tour mate for Behemoth if you're not scared. Majesties on 20 Buck Spin. New band, sounds like Old School In Flames, At the Gates, that kind of stuff. Great shit. I'm going to shout out Blood Incantation specifically too, because these old dudes are always talking about like, nobody uses old school technology. Everybody's fixing everything. Everybody's digital, blah, blah, blah. Blood Incantation, from what I understand, recorded their last like proper death metal album straight to tape. And I don't think, I'm sure we all use Pro Tools. I think Adam even says they used Pro Tools minimally on the last Behemoth record. Like Blood Incantation, I'm pretty sure they like use technology, modern technology, as little as possible. And listening to that record, it is as human as it gets, man. I mean, there's stuff on it that I understand as well as anybody that you want to edit apart and take it off the record because, you know, I think legit artists are their own worst critics. And so maybe there's a drum head or there's a guitar timing thing where the two guitar players weren't exactly on with each other. And as an artist, when you hear that, it's just, ooh, I even like read an interview with Rob Halford where he was like, I listened back to our records and I'm like, God, and he hears stuff that, oh, I wish I could have done that better, which is fucking crazy. It's Rob Halford. But the point being, you want to leave stuff like that on the record. Dimebag Darrell has a video, I think in Dime Vision, or it's on YouTube, where he talks about the stuff that makes you cringe might be the part that somebody that needs to really like get off on that music, they hear it and they're just like, oh. And it's so easy, for me at least, to listen to other bands, like Blood Incantation, for example, and hear that human element and fucking love it and get excited and feel it's a transfer of their emotion and their feelings literally across space and time, and it hits you. And you might feel a little different than they did because it's coming through your filter. But there's a definite transfer of humanity. So, I mean, at the end of the day, I'm having fun here, fucking around, talking shit. No disrespect intended to anybody. Maybe a little bit of disrespect, but nothing serious. I don't disagree with that sentiment that music is too polished these days. I do disagree with the claim that 99% of bands sound the same and are too polished or whatever. And I get it's an interview and shit get excited when you're talking and pissed off. I do too. Things get taken out of context. But in a world full of atoms, let's try to be more like Fenriz and let's get that 99 down to like 97. All right. This has been the first episode of Big Riff Energy. Hope you enjoyed it. Like I said, I'm figuring it out as I go. And I'm not going to edit any of these. I mean, because it takes fucking forever. I'm going to line the video up with audio and that's it. There's no cuts. There's no whatever. So you're getting some real shit here. Anyway, be on the lookout for more episodes and Spirit Adrift music coming soon. Like I said, we got a new album coming out. And that's it, man. See you next time.